Hello and welcome to a live Deprogram with Carrie Smith. I'm your host, Carrie, and today is Monday, February 17th. I hope you had a great weekend. We did. I hope you had a good Valentine's Day. And if you went to church this weekend, I hope it was a good service and you saw friends and you had just a great time. We're back. We're back. There was a lot of stuff happening online this weekend, and there's this one story that really I just couldn't stop reading about it. I still can't stop reading about it. It's one of these kind of things that's right up my alley in terms of interest for several reasons. And that was the story of Patriarchy Hannah on X, who was an influential, it was an X account with some amount of influence, who also had a podcast about being a woman who supports the patriarchy, and how uh, I guess she called herself trad wife. In this whole whatever this trad wife world is that's online, traditional wife, I guess that's what it's short for. Anyway, she was an influential account within that community. And over the weekend, it came out that she's a complete fraud. And I don't just mean the way that a lot of people are. I mean, she took it to the max, and even her name was fake. Her whole identity was fake. Everything she told anyone about her was fake. She presented herself for years and built this following and built this podcast around being a mother. Well, married, first of all, to a guy named Tony who doesn't exist, but she created an X account for him that she ran to make him seem real, and interacted with herself back and forth with these accounts. She was supposedly married to this guy who doesn't exist, and she had said she was a mom of 14 children. Turns out she is a single woman, 37 years old, who lives with her parents. And none of those things were true. She also fabricated a past. Who knows what among these things that she told were true, but I tend to, my rule of thumb is just to not trust a single thing they've ever said, any type of cluster B person. And so she had said that she had some past where she was sex trafficked. So there are people who are bringing up all these different elaborate lies and stories that she told. And all of this has been coming to light. So I wasn't in this woman's community, and I'm very glad that I wasn't one of the people who she manipulated. But I understand it. And so we're going to be talking about that today, because for a couple of reasons. Somebody asked me, why do you care about this story? It was a guy who was basically like, I don't care about this at all. And I was like, well, okay, I do care. And he said, you only care because you were one of the ones who was duped. And I was like, well, first of all, I wasn't one of the ones who was duped. Thankfully, I didn't know who this woman was, but I have been duped. Yes, I'll admit it. That is why one of the reasons I'm interested. I have been taken in and conned, both by cluster B individuals and by cluster B ideology, like social justice, woke ideology, and by cluster B behavior and tactics in the media, and by cluster B behavior and tactics in my government. So it does matter to me. And whenever there's a story about a cluster B person that becomes somewhat high profile, and people are, first of all, there's people reeling from it who were affected by this woman, who were taken advantage of by this woman. And I feel for those people, people who were targeted for abuse and bullying by this woman. And I feel for those people. And secondly, whenever there's a story like this that's high profile enough, I think it helps. It's a good illustration for people to better understand cluster B dynamics, toxicity, not just in individuals, not just so that they can avoid those people, mark and avoid those people in their day-to-day life, which I'm a big believer in that, marking and avoiding them. But also so that we can understand it on a societal level better. Understanding it on the individual level, I've said this for years, helps us understand it better on the societal level. So when you can understand it when an individual does things like gaslighting or DARVO, like deny and reverse victim offender, then you can understand it when you see it on a bigger level. A great example that I've given before is DARVO, deny and reverse victim offender. Great example, Justin Trudeau in Canada. This is a guy who was pushing authoritarian policies, Authoritarian meaning the government had ultimate say and control over people's personal medical decisions in their lives and their pursuit of liberty and happiness and freedom. He was putting authoritarianism above individualism, above liberty, and he was trying to force people to get this new and experimental medical treatment, this shot. And there were truckers who were being affected by this, who were not going to be able to drive and deliver their truckloads in Canada if they did not get this particular vaccine he wanted them to get. And so when they protested, they did the Freedom Convoy, and they were protesting, let's be very clear, they were protesting authoritarianism. They were protesting against his authoritarianism. What did he do? He called them authoritarians. He did the two Spider-Men pointing at each other meme. And if you understand, if you've ever dealt with, unfortunately, if you've ever dealt with a cluster B person, you recognize that. You're like, oh, I see what's happening here. He's trying to confuse onlookers. He's taking narcissists and sociopaths and borderline personality disorder people, histrionic personality disorder people. They're all cluster B. I don't think it really cares much. They all have a high degree of narcissism. They have very low empathy. They all lie. They engage in deception. They all engage in Darvo. So I just lump them all in together now. Cluster B people, they will often take whatever is the most effective and true criticism of themselves and description of their behavior, of what they're doing. They will take that thing that is the most true about them, and they will project it out. They will do Darvo, and they will accuse others of it. So that any onlooker, the hope there is that any onlooker and bystander who's not paying close attention will see two sides, like in the case of Trudeau and the truckers, two sides each calling each other authoritarians. And they're like, I don't know what to make of this. Who's the authoritarian? You know, that's the goal of that behavior. It's to diffuse the accurate criticism and description of what they are. So I bring this up because this is why I'm interested in it, both for on an individual level and on a societal level. I think it's important. And I think a lot of pain and heartache and a lot of our problems like could be avoided if people became better able to spot the red flags that indicate there might be cluster B personality disorder there, or at least cluster B tactics, a large number of them, cluster B traits. So I've talked about cluster B on and off over the years. I've interviewed, and I've been interviewed by one of my friends, Josh Slocum, has a whole podcast about cluster B. I highly recommend it. It's called, some of you I know watch that show also. It's called Disaffected. It's great. And yeah, so here, we're going to talk about it again today because this story I think is just such a great, unfortunately, a great illustration of this kind of disordered personality and the havoc that they wreak. Okay, so here's this, the guy who, there were several people who contributed to unmasking this complete fraud. But the one who put it all together in a thread and kind of did the expose in one place was Ryan Duff. Pretty sure he credited some of the other people who helped him tracking down information and stuff. So let's read through the thread because this is going to be illustrative. So he says, who is Patriarchy Hannah? And her handle, she keeps deleting her Twitter account and then coming back and saying none of this is true and then deleting it again. And so I think currently she's deleted, but she might come back. Who knows? She was posting under Harmonized Grace. So he says, who is Patriarchy Hannah? Join me on a deep dive as I explain how Hannah is a completely fabricated persona and how a random 37-year-old woman in Arkansas named Jennifer Bays is behind the account. So this was a screenshot of her ex account. You can see she used one of those little cartoon avatars. So she didn't have a real picture of herself, and described herself as Christian. First and foremost, Christian. This was a person who was a predator in the Christian community, in the online Christian community. A wolf in sheep's clothing, if you will. So Christian, wife of What's Good, It's T. Now, if you go to What's Good, It's T, that's her fake husband's account. And she also ran that. And It's kind of a funny account because it's a woman trying to sound like a man and trying to sound like a man who, like, sometimes his name is supposedly Tony. And wait, let me just show you what he supposedly his avatar looked like. This is him. That's him. He was like a former convicted felon with a heart of gold. You know, she like wrote, it's like a romance writer writing the story of these, yeah, catfish tactics. Thank you, Joshua. This is the ultimate catfish, and catfish thousands of people. And so, what's good? It's tea, Tony. He would it would be like her speaking for him. So it's a woman trying to talk like the way a man talks, and sometimes he would speak in very broken English grammar, like he wouldn't use punctuation, and other times he would. You know, it was sort of like, look at this, there's no punctuation. Ladies in the replies, please hear me. I don't argue with women who aren't my wife, and my wife don't argue with me. Go argue with your own husbands or fathers if you got it, but I ain't responding to you. If you don't like what I say, go follow someone else. LOL. No punctuation, no apostrophes, nothing. Like the way she had to make him sound. And both of these accounts, and her fake account and her husband's fake account, she loved the Theo Bros. Okay. Eric Kahn, Joel Webbin, Brian Suave, these guys who've been flirting with neo-Nazi crap, and lately talking about how these are pastors, by the way, lately, who are talking about how supposedly the latest I've heard is one of them, Joel Webbin, saying that white people we have higher IQs on average than black people, which is true. But he says the reason for that is because God has blessed us as a race, because we are more faithful throughout history as a race, which is funny because it's like, well, does that mean that Jewish people, who you bag on all the time with your anti-Semitism, and who on average have higher IQs than white people, does that mean that God has blessed them because of their faithfulness throughout history? What about East Asians? What about East Asians who have higher IQs than white people on average, which is true? Is that because they've been more faithful as a race and God has blessed them? Like, he's saying crazy racist stuff. Anyway, the point is, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. That's another not a wolf in sheep's clothing, but a wolf in shepherd's clothing. But anyway, it is important that she propped up all of these false shepherds and was retweeting them all the time and engaging with them, and that they went on her podcast, even though they don't believe women should have podcasts. They went on her podcast to explain why women are more gullible and more easily deceived. I'm not kidding. Went on her show to say this, even though they were being deceived by her. This rabbit hole's crazy, guys. It's crazy. Okay. So this is her account. We're going to scroll down and find out a little more. We have to read the expose first. So Ryan says, first, some quick background. Patriarchy Hannah is an account that portrays a, quote, trad wife who has 14 kids. Her husband, Tony, owns a construction company and a town, Tony Town, where their family and kids live. She's gained a large following over the past few years. She also ran a Discord community where some of her followers talk and hang out. Her Discord was disbanded yesterday after allegations surfaced that she's not who she claimed to be. It started with a house. So here's some of the evidence. It started with a house. In November of 2023, Hannah claimed that she had just built a house in Tonytown for her son. Tonytown is what she called their town. Tonytown for her son and soon-to-be daughter-in-law. Unfortunately, this house was not built by her husband, Tony, like she claimed, and his friends. It was built by a custom home builder for a different person. So people found, this was her screenshot. She went online. She found a picture of this house. She shared it. She said, another successful home build completed in Tonytown. Welcome to our new neighbors, our son, and after the 18th, his wife, his fiance. And somebody said, you built your son a house? And she said, not me personally, but Tony, her husband, her fake husband, and his uncles and brothers did. The land we gave him, we do it for all of our sons. And if you continue, you'll find out the house was actually, there's information about this house online, and it was built for a woman, or by a woman and her sister in 2020 for their mother, who has since passed away. And you can see the home builders who built it. They had social media posts, of course, when the home was finished, bragging about how they finished it. So he says this house matches the Google Street View and satellite imagery down to the propane tank in the side yard and the stairs down to the river. Property records confirm it was built by a woman and her sister in 2020 for their mother, who since passed away in 2023. So there's information on the house, the real information on the house. He continues. Hannah has since deleted this post. Hannah, by the way, again, not her real name. Hannah has since deleted this post when people called her out for it. But how did she get a picture of this house from across the river? Well, it turns out Hannah, the person playing Hannah online, her parents, Bobby and Jolynn, own property there. As you can see, it's a convenient walking distance to the river behind the house. So basically, she lives with her parents and they live pretty close to this house, and she snapped a picture of it at some point. So how do you know Jennifer is Hannah? Well, at one point, one of the ladies in the group was sent a stroller. The Amazon receipt said from Jennifer, and the name and the Amazon account was Jennifer's mother's, with an address in Arkansas. This address matches a whole set of addresses that Jennifer and her parents have lived at across Arkansas and Louisiana. More evidence that points to the Bays family connection. And now that we have a reasonable suspicion that Jennifer Bays is pretending to be Hannah, let's explore that a bit. So then he includes pictures of her house, because she only once or twice would share a picture of herself, and you're about to see that picture turned out to be somebody else's picture. She stole somebody's photos and was trying to pass them off as her own, but she would share pictures of the inside of the house. And somebody did reverse image search and found, look at this. A few years ago, Hannah had shared access with some of the ladies in the group. Property records on that address showed an LLC listed as the owner. Louisiana business search records show that LLC to be owned by Jennifer's parents. They also shared a picture in her Discord, which happens to match the Zillow pictures for that address. So the pictures she has been sharing are pictures of this woman, Jennifer's parents' house. She's sharing pictures and saying, excuse the mess, we just got back into town, There's another Louisiana house. Her parents owned another nearby property about 30 minutes away. At one point, she provided pictures from that house. And as you would expect, the pictures from inside that house match what's found on Zillow for her parents' other property. So at this point, we can be reasonably confident someone within the Bays family is pretending to be Hannah. Here's another point. Her grandmother. In September, this fake persona, Hannah, said that her grandmother passed away. As it turns out, that's the exact same day that Jennifer's grandmother passed away. In Jennifer's grandmother's obituary, there's mention of a Haiti Education Foundation as a place to send donations. Hannah joked about this in Discord. The obituary also clarified some details on the family. It confirms that Bobby and Jolynn Bays are the parents of Jennifer. It also clarifies the other four. It clarifies that there's only there's 4 grandchildren. Jennifer's one of them. There's no Hannah. There's no Hannah who's married to Tony, who has 14 kids. There's only 3 great grandkids listed. And this is where she had posted something, because she's one of these people who would overshare, which we all do to some degree, but she was online. People noticed. They were like, how is she online, sometimes 20 hours a day when she's supposedly homeschooling? She's got 14 children. And she's always online and she's always oversharing. And so here she's like, my aunt, can you please help me work on the obituary? I want to add something about the Haiti Education Fund that the church sponsors. And then she's like, I got you, fam. And she posts some joke about what she would say. And you can see in the actual obituary for her Jennifer Bays grandmother that Haiti Education Foundation was listed. So she's taking little things from her real life and then changing them and expounding on them. Tony. So far, there's no evidence that her husband Tony exists besides some lightly used X account that would occasionally interact with Hannah. Per Jennifer's grandmother's obituary, Jennifer is not married. As for the construction company that Tony supposedly owns, building homes, it turns out that's actually what Jennifer's father does. Kids. Per the obituary of Jennifer's grandmother 5 months ago, only 3 great-grandchildren were mentioned. But I thought Hannah had 14 kids. Does she have any at all? Tonytown. Hannah has shared pictures of Tonytown, where they live. As it turns out, this is just next the next town north of Jennifer's parents' house in Arkansas, another figment of this imaginary tale. Multiple people have spoken to Hannah on the phone, but never face to face. She would never do videos. All of her podcasts were audio only. At one point, those close to her asked for proof of who she was, and she provided a photo. Unfortunately, the photo she provided was pulled from someone else's Facebook profile. This woman is not her. This is a woman named Allison Brown, but she was using her photo. Two separate sources have confirmed that the photo below was given by Hannah as proof of her identity. So she was stealing people's pictures. At this point, we've pretty much confirmed that 37-year-old Jennifer Bays is cosplaying as Hannah, and that Hannah doesn't even exist. Neither does her husband, Tony, at least not in that capacity, nor does she have 14 children. So has Hannah shared anything that's true, or is this just one big imaginary tale? And then he continues, one last point. I've crafted this thread as carefully as I could, exposing just enough detail to confirm what I've found without compromising additional names, locations, or addresses. I've withheld images from certain parts because of the sensitive nature. I hope Jennifer will come clean about her ruse and apologize to those she's hurt with her lies. Sometimes these things start off fun, but then spiral out of control. And I think that's where this is at now. And then that was when she first deleted her account, brought it back. And I want to... Let me address this, because this is part of the reason I'm doing this video is not Lisa Elizabeth in particular, but people who have this point of view. I heard from a couple, it's not the majority, but I heard from a couple of people. There were a couple of people when so-called Patriarchy Hannah came back from, like, she deleted her account, then she brought it back and she denied everything, but didn't give any explanation as to any of this. Also, her birthday, which she has admitted through posts, like what her birthday is. It's Jennifer Bay's birthday. There's all these like details that are just very specific and can't really be explained away. And the women that followed her and were had experience with her started coming out. And I'm going to show you some of that. But wait. First of all, no, Jay Thomas. No, stop excusing illegal behavior as a psychological problem. I'm not excusing it at all, sir. You don't know me at all. I am not excusing it. It's evil. It is a psychological, I guess you could call it problem, if you will, but it's also evil. Personality disorders are very different from normal mental health problems that people have. Let's be clear, because you and I probably agree, Jay Thomas, on this. There's a lot of normal mental health issues that everybody experiences at some point or another, like depression or anxiety. Okay. These are like normal things that ebb and flow that you maybe will have experience with at some point in your life. People with personality disorders, cluster B personality disorders, they used to be called character disorders for a reason. I wish they had not changed the name, because character disorders accurately describes what they are. These are people that are sociopaths, psychopaths. These are people like O.J. Simpson. I just saw there's a new docuseries about him that's out, that absolute psychopath. These are people who lie with impunity. They don't care. They don't have shame. They don't have shame like normal people. These are disorders of the character, of who they are as people. They are bad people. Saying and being able to understand like better what this is, whether you call it a personality disorder or you just call it evil or you call it a demon, I don't care. It's all the same thing. You're talking about the same thing. So these labels are good in as much as like helping us to identify what this is. This is what the medical establishment calls these people, but it does not excuse any illegal behavior. It does not excuse it at all. When you hear someone say, oh, well, that person who murdered, he's been diagnosed as having antisocial personality disorder. He's been diagnosed as a psychopath. That doesn't clear him of any legal responsibility for anything that he's done to anyone. Not at all. Not morally, not legally, if he knows right from wrong. So I agree with you, sir. This is not the same as saying, oh, it's like a normal thing like depression or anxiety or something that people deal with. No, it's not. This is a disorder of a person's character. I get really like, I'm like, no, I'm upset because I agree with you. It does not excuse it. These people In my opinion, I don't have a very high tolerance for them. Yes, they can be treated, but not with medication. That hasn't been proven effective. Mostly, it's gonna be with people who have seen some success in reducing cluster B behaviors. It's been with, uh, dialectical behavior therapy, but most of them are not gonna seek out therapy, or if they do seek, because they don't think anything's wrong with them. It's because they have such a high degree of narcissism. Nothing's wrong with them, it's always the other person. And if they do seek out therapy, they're going to manipulate their therapist oftentimes to get the therapist to give them the diagnosis they want. They're just the poor put upon person. Everyone is awful to them. You know, everyone else is to blame, not them. So they'll go in and they'll manipulate and finagle and try to get a depression diagnosis and just get off on going back to see that therapist over and over and manipulating and spinning this tale. Bros and bros. Maybe he was speaking generally that people should stop excusing. Oh, I agree. Well, if that's what he was saying, I agree. I get my back up about it because it doesn't excuse it, not at all. And I just, speaking of the O.J. Simpson docuseries that's out, there's a new one out. I think it's 4 episodes. I'm very familiar with that case. This docuseries my husband actually wanted to watch with me, which usually he doesn't watch true crime. But we were just remarking on some of the stuff, and it's a really great series. It has some stuff that you won't find in other series. But if you go back and watch any footage with O.J. Simpson, it's complete smug attitude. When he was deposed, when he actually had to testify at the civil trial, just complete contempt for even being there. Complete contempt for the process. Everything is somebody else's problem. Everything is somebody else's fault. You know, nothing can touch this guy in his mind. Just it infuriates me. Um, yeah. Okay. So if the glove fits, is that immoral? Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Yeah, I take offense at his level of smugness. I do too. And look, let me tell you guys, this is for anybody who's interested in true crime, there's another one of these narcissistic, sociopathic cluster B murderers like little OJ who just got off in Florida. I don't know if you guys have been following that case, the 17-year-old who shot and killed his dad 2 years ago and then a few months ago butchered his mom to death with a knife. And the jury just found him not guilty. Insane. Within a span of 2 years, butchered both of his parents and was just let out. Little total psychopath. Okay. We mostly know of the cluster B individuals who become in the public eye for violence. So we think of them as always being, well, like if I describe someone like Patriarchy Hannah as in the same group or cluster B personality or character disorders as OJ or as this guy in Florida who just got off, people are like, "Oh, that's not the same." Of course they did different things. I'm saying the character disorder is the same. The lack of shame, the lack of empathy, absolute deceit, no guilt or shame about spinning elaborate crazy lies, doing whatever they want, feeling like they're entitled to tell anybody anything, to toy with anybody's emotions. So some of the women, I'll get back on track. Some of the women were coming out and saying they were sharing their experiences with her. And it turns out that she was fairly abusive and bullying online towards women who either she felt threatened by or who had questions for her. Any woman who questioned her, who was like, hey, like even quietly behind the scenes, if they questioned her about certain contradictions or hypocrisies, or she would start smearing them publicly and privately. So she was engaging in smear campaigns and bullying campaigns against some women. Other women claimed that she would try and do trauma bonding with them, where she would pull information out of them. And she would overshare things, like make up stories, probably having experience with some of these individuals. And she probably took stories from some women that were sharing personal, intimate things with her, and then passed them off to other women privately as her own, because these are like skinwalkers. They collect the mannerisms, the stories, the experiences of other people, and they build this shape-shifting mask with it, and they try and build a personality and a persona out of it. They callously will take the stories and experiences of some people and then pass those off as their own. And so some women were saying that, like, this one woman, oh my gosh, let me bring this one up. Well, I'll bring it up in a second, but there's a woman, there were women who shared experiences of infertility with her. And she would also claim to be infertile and pull more info and more intimate details from them. But then with the other women, say she was pregnant and then had just miscarried. So it was this sort of, these lies for this person, these lies for this person, but just keeping people on the hook and getting as much info as she could about them. Yes, Adam Worrell, Slitheen from Doctor Who. Bros and Bows, I absolutely agree. The internet is conducive to the spread of cluster B tactics. Yes, it is. So this is part of the reason this, I wanted to talk about this today, and Lisa Elizabeth here, who I've met. I don't know her well. I've met her at an event. She says that she FaceTimed with her, but she doesn't say if she saw her face or not, and she doesn't say if her face matched the pictures of Jennifer Bay or if they matched the fake stolen pictures that Hannah was putting out. But she says, so there's that, and I'm not going to sit here and dignify your ridiculous rabbit hole with any more defenses of her. I said what I said. I think what you're doing is mean-spirited. This is what she's saying to the guy who is exposing this fraud. It's mean-spirited and you should reevaluate. She also, a little further down, said, even if it turns out to be true, let me see if I can find that, that she's fine with it because this fake person, Patriarchy Hannah, was nice to her or treated her well. So even if this woman turns out to be a complete sociopathic fraud, she says, that's cool, that's fine. And there were a couple of people who said similar things in the comments, just a couple. Thankfully, it wasn't the majority, but there were a couple who said, what does it matter? There were a few in Patriarchy Hannah's comments who said, I don't care if all of this is true. I really like the content. I don't care if you lied about everything. Like, it doesn't matter. Here's that tweet, by the way. It says, I don't bail on people that have been good to me. And even if all of it is somewhat true, I don't give a shit. I treat people how they treat me. Well, another way of saying that is, I don't care if this person turns out to be a horrible sociopath who abused people and gaslit them and lied and manipulated and conned people. I don't care, because this person was nice to me because they perceived that I have social power and I'm important. That's what that means. Is like, it's either poor judgment or poor character. It could be, I'm going to be gracious, I assume it's poor judgment. I assume you've never had this kind of a sociopath in your life who's done this to you, so you don't know what it's like. So you're easily conned and you're like, well, this person was nice to me. Why do you think she was nice to you? You have social currency. You book for one of the top podcasts. Like, why do you think a con artist was nice to you? And there was a spaces about this last night where some of the women who had been taken advantage of by Patriarchy Hannah came on to speak and were telling things that happened to them. And one of them, who's kind of higher profile, Hillary Crowder, who's the ex-wife of Steven Crowder, she said, I would see her, something to the effect of, I would see her bad behavior, and I wish I had said something, but I didn't say something because she had not treated me that way yet. Like, she was like nice to me. And I think one lesson in that is, it doesn't matter if a person is nice to you or not. If they are a con artist and a grifter and they have bad behavior and they have bad fruit, don't allow yourself to be so easily manipulated. They are with flattery. If you have something that they want, or they think you have something that they want, whether it's power, influence, money, association with positive character traits. Sometimes they want to get close to you because people have good feelings about you and they want to be associated with you for that reason. Like, whatever it is they're trying to get from you, don't be a narcissist yourself. Like, don't let the empty flattery go to your head and prevent you from making an accurate observation because they haven't done that to you, but you've seen them do it to other people. Does that make sense? I think that's a great bit of advice to pull from it. If you pull anything else from it, it's like, don't be that easily conned. Oh, well, this person kissed my ass. Who cares? Who cares? I mean, the truth above all else. Loyalty is a virtue, yes, but only loyalty to someone who's deserving of it. Only loyalty to a person who's virtuous and has good character. Loyalty to a snake is not a virtue. Imagine people saying, well, I was loyal to Epstein, or I was loyal to Weinstein. There was a guy in the new OJ documentary series, his former sports agent, who was loyal to him for a good long time, even though he says in the documentary, I knew from the beginning that he did it. But he was loyal. Why? Loyalty is not a virtue to if the loyalty is to someone who's not deserving of it, if it's to a snake. Good Grief says it's like a mind F being the flying monkey. You feel special. Yeah, so that's one of their tactics, is because some of the people who were sharing the experiences on the spaces that I listened to, and I only got to listen to part of it, but they were sharing different tactics. Okay, so some of them were saying, in the private messages with me, she was milking me for she was trauma bonding with me, milking me for personal traumatic stories, and then saying she experienced that too. And I felt close to her, and that's why I didn't ever want to say anything about her bad behavior, because she had shared so much personal stuff with me. And it's like, you were being played in that way, right? Then there were other people who said, she never milked me for personal information, but she kissed my ass constantly. Or, it was this flattery thing, never came after me, but like put me on some pedestal. And then others who said, the second I asked one question, she started spreading hateful rumors about me to other people publicly and privately. Like, it was sort of, she made an example of me to everyone else. So they have different tactics with different people. And you're right. The ones that they manipulate and use, the ones who I would say are, if we talk about it like a cult, the ones who are in their cult, who they give marching orders to do stuff for them. I mean, it's reportedly, some of these women are saying that she would participate in these public kind of belittling and mocking campaigns of other Christian women, women that had asked questions about her. And some of these women have now come forward and apologized and said, I'm sorry if I participated in that. I'm sorry if I took her word. Basically they're saying, I'm sorry, I was a flying monkey for this person. Yes, Tomsky, run away, run away, run away. So one of the things that I do, and again, I have very low tolerance for it. I'm not saying everybody has to have the same approach, but here's something I do to try and diffuse these situations before they even start. And I've learned this the hard way, that the painful way, if you will, through experience. And to make sure that I don't ever become an enabler of someone like this or a flying monkey, is I have very low tolerance. I've gotten to where I don't just block people like Patriarchy Hannah, because to me it's obvious that, now anyway, that she's a crazy cluster B and a complete fraud. But I will block the flying monkey. I block the flying monkeys ahead of time, before they even get a chance to ever interact with me at all, because there's so many people you interact with online, and I'm not going to remember who those people are. So I'm just going to block them now, because I don't want to ever have that person slide into my messages and strike up some fake friendship with me. And people who have bad judgment or bad character, I almost don't even care if it's bad judgment or bad character. You could be a good person with bad judgment, and there's lots of real reasons why you might have that bad judgment. In fact, sometimes you've got bad judgment because you experienced a cluster B person in your childhood. Maybe you're the child of a cluster B parent, and these predators can sniff that out and smell that out, and they know how to use you, or to con you. So maybe there's a good reason that you have bad judgment about them and let them near you. I don't know. The point is, my advice is if I think I cut you out if I think you have bad judgment too. I do. I'm sorry, I just do. It doesn't. It's like, or at least I put you at a really far arm's length distance. So there were a couple people in my comments who were asking me, or this doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if this person lied. Everybody lies. And I was like, what? What? Okay. Mark and avoid you too. Like, thanks for letting me know. That's crazy, dude. No, everybody doesn't lie. No, everybody's got a like everybody makes up a husband and 14 kids and cons people and gets them to send gifts and all this other stuff that she was doing and shames them. There were women saying she was shaming them for their perceived deficits in their relationships with their husband or with their kids. Meanwhile, she didn't even have a husband or kids. It was all made up. It was all made up. Okay, so she also fat shamed people and talked about how skinny she was. Well, it turns out there's pictures of her and she's what you would expect. She is a fat, lying loser who, but then would post all this stuff about, why the benefits of being skinny and making other women feel bad about their weight while she was obese. Like, these people are just gross. They're just projection, just gross people inside. Okay, let's look at some of this. One of the then we're going to look at a list of tactics for disarming these kind of people. This is one of the funniest parts when the internet sleuths started putting this all together and unmasking this predator, is that she would sometimes post pictures of herself. Supposedly she was a baker, which they were like, really? Because she's always eating at Sonic all the time. But then she would say she was a baker. But anyway, look at this. This was when I love internet sleuths. Somebody zoomed in on the reflection of her when she took a picture of the sourdough starter. And you can see she is a very, very large woman. She is not the woman she was portraying herself to be. And so it's just always funny to me when people find like these little, like, this is part of what brought you down, girl. Like, you fake her. This is it. It's just something. It's the sourdough starter. Turns out Jennifer Bays, the person who pulled off this con, and she probably, if you're a true crime person, you're probably getting hints of other people, like the woman who faked her own faked cancer. Like, there's a lot of, it's going to bring to mind lots of other sociopaths who've done stuff like this. It turns out she's been arrested for identity theft, of course. In November of 2011, at the age of 24, Jennifer Bays was arrested and charged with identity theft. How completely unironic. Here's a clipping from the newspaper, the local newspaper there, about her, and you can see that conviction. Also, people noticed that when she would post things like pictures of canning and stuff, it was an older woman's hands. It was like, these are not the hands and arms of a 37-year-old woman. And now I think it's clearly, and then she would delete the pictures. At first she would say, well, it was her aunt was visiting, and then she would delete the pictures. But originally, again, passing these pictures off as pictures of her doing this, it was probably her mom who she lives with. It's probably her mom who cans. Here's some of the women she attacked, and there were many. There were many. And I think a lot of times these people go after anyone that they're jealous of for whatever reason, that maybe this person has character attributes that they want, or they think this person has character attributes that they want, or maybe this person has some degree of a following or something that this person wants. And so she would go after Allie Beth Stuckey. Allie Beth Stuckey says, the irony is that while Patriarchy Hannah was calling me a girl boss feminist, that's what Patriarchy Hannah and all these Theo bros, these neo-Nazi pastor guys, they call conservative women like Allie Beth Stuckey, they call her a feminist, which is kind of funny. But she goes, so while Patriarchy Hannah was calling me a girl boss feminist, she, single and childless, was stroking the egos of married men on X while I was probably at home breastfeeding my third baby and making my husband a sandwich on sourdough. It's too good. Yeah. It's like, you have to laugh at it because it's so dark. The deception is so gross. It's like you have to find the humor where you can find it. And it's like, yeah, the irony of that, right? I'm going to show you one that's not so funny. This one burns me up. This is one of the women who got played by her. Ah, this kills me. Okay. Here, I've got two of hers. I'll just pull them both up. This is a woman. I don't know her. I've started following a lot of these people because I want to hear about them, these people who were taken advantage of by her. I want to hear what they have to say, what real women in this community have to say. So this is a woman named Lizzie. I think her handle is Farming in Jesus. So she says, want to hear why people care that Patriarchy Hannah lied? She harmed many. How? She said, y'all know that we've lost 11 babies and had some failed adoptions. She told me that she would talk to Jeff. Okay, let me explain who this is. So one of the big lies that Patriarchy Hannah told lots of people, more than one, she would tell them that she and her family were close friends with some pastor named Jeff Durbin. I guess he's some famous pastor. And she made up all these stories about how he would stay at her house and he ate all of her kids' snacks and stuff. And turns out on Twitter, he just confirmed and said, I don't know who this woman is. And my wife laughed when I told her this because she knows, like, he's like, I hate staying at people's houses. It makes me very uncomfortable. I'd rather stay at a hotel. He's like, I've only ever stayed at one person's house and I was really uncomfortable the whole time. Like, he's just like, no, I have no idea. Now it's become a meme of like him eating people's snacks and staying in their homes. But she would go around and brag. What is that for? Why does this cluster B person do something like that? It's for prestige. It's making up a story. I have a connection to this famous person. I'm going to tell you privately about it. You know, that's what she would do. So anyway, she told this woman that she told me she would talk to Jeff Durbin and let him know to contact me if they ever get any babies that have been saved on his end via his end abortion now efforts, to be given false hope that she knows the ins and outs, and quote, he for sure would be able to help you, end quote. Imagine the cruel heart that's willing to play with a woman who's lost her real babies, not fake ones she made up, and watched adoptions fall through her hands and cried enough tears to send her to the ocean. Imagine it. It is sick. Whoever you are, you're sick. This is a woman who's lost 11 babies and numerous failed attempts to adopt. And Patriarchy Hannah pulled this personal information out of her, this personal trauma, this intimacy, and lied to her and gave her false hope about helping her find a baby to adopt. Like, just evil. Okay, this is the same woman. She says, I'm sorry, I know we need to let this go, but many of us built an actual, or what we thought was actual, friendship with her. And I think about all the conversations I had with Hannah over the years and how she told me she got a hysterectomy because of sexual abuse. And that's how we bonded, because I was losing baby after baby. And it's like she preyed on us. And then she told someone else that she was pregnant and lost the baby last year. Yeah, and she probably took your story, Lizzie. That's what these people do. She took your story and told it to someone else to make herself appear more human. That's what they do. They wear skin suits of people. It's like they're studying how to appear to be human. She also told me she had sex with her husband 3 times a day, every day, because he required that. And I thought that seemed a little excessive, a lot excessive, and a bit weird and creepy, as well as lacking in self-control on his part. I see now what she was doing. She was shaming women and trying to make us feel low and not good enough because we hadn't adopted 14 kids and we don't make sourdough weekly and we don't offer ourselves up 21 times a week. This is absolutely psycho behavior because she made it up. This chick needs to be on Dateline and committed, but most of all, she needs to be born again. And Pray for her. My goodness. That story breaks my heart. PH Joy. So is that sociopathy or psychopathy? I don't think it matters. Actually, if you watch the show I recommended earlier, Disaffected with Josh Slocum, he's of the same opinion, and there are many people who actually are in the mental health field who are coming to this opinion recently that these distinctions we try to make between sociopaths and psychopaths don't really mean all that much. It doesn't matter. It's antisocial personality disorder. It's lack of empathy for another person, complete narcissism, and a willingness to hurt and abuse others without feeling any remorse or shame about it at all. Like, all for personal gain. Like, so this is why, when people are saying, why does it matter? Or even if it turns out to be true, I don't care. Well, I do. I care that people like this are allowed to go out and predate on others. And if you know that and you enable it, if you know what they are and you enable it, you're part of it, of allowing it to continue. So this person, homemaker Megs, she goes by on X, Mrs. Megan Everly. She says, well, here's one big lie cleared up. She told me this lie personally. A lie about a pretty big name pastor like this is substantial enough to make you wonder. Please, people, do not give Hannah time to come up with a game plan, because there is none. And this is that pastor I mentioned, Jeff Durbin, officially saying, I do not know who this person is. And I've never stayed at her house or eaten her kids' snacks. My wife chuckled when she saw that claim, because I generally don't stay at people's houses. It makes me very, very, very uncomfortable. I can only recall doing it with a family I'm very close to in Ireland, and their names are not Hannah and Tony. So there's another kind of a funny one in the middle of all this, of just like, crazy. So here's one of the things she did to another woman. This is what she did to a feminist misogynist. This is the smear campaign thing. This is another one of their tactics. So she says, this is what Hannah did to me. She is not a nice person. I'm tired of hearing she is. And she shared some screenshots. She's hidden the person's handle to protect them. But this was a person saying to her, to feminist misogynists, saying, remember, she told me to watch out for you, that you were not good company to have. I was new to this app. It was a year ago. She told multiple people that about you. And then I got to know you, and I was like, question, question, question. And she replies and says, yeah, you were the first one who approached me with this. And I was like, what? And she goes, I know she did it. She ran a hardcore smear campaign on me with subtweets and all. Even her friends joined in. I know which ones they are too. It's really sad and crappy she did it. But this is something she did to a lot of women, was this smear campaign. This is, again, the Darvo thing, right? Deny and reverse the victim offender. If a narcissist thinks that you have their number, they assume that you're going to start warning people about them. I'm a little ambivalent about whether to warn or not. In most cases, I don't anymore. It depends. There have been occasions where I have, but for the most part, I don't. I kind of figure I'm going to say what I believe publicly, so it's out there in public about this bad character, and that'll be the place people can go to refer to. Otherwise, it's like, you can't. People have to learn it. It's almost like people have to learn it themselves. In very rare circumstances would I warn. But anyway, they think you're going to start warning people. So what do? They do Jarvo. They go out and they start warning people about you. They start doing the very thing they're saying that you're doing or imagining that you're doing. And they start going out and telling people what a bad person you are, because they know that you have their number. Yes, good grief. This is why I don't warn. He says, same. I don't warn unless someone comes to me. Telling others always backfires. Yes, 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 yes. And I've talked to many people who've been the targets of cluster B people, and I think most of them would agree. would come down the side of, sorry, not warning, or if you warn, just do it publicly. But no, you're gonna reap the whirlwind by doing that. Like Jay Thomas, was the goal financial or her own psychological gratification? Thank you for asking that. By the way, Jay Thomas is over at Rumble. We are simulcasting there if you prefer watching there, because YouTube still likes to censor a lot of crap. Well, a lot of stuff. They crappily censor stuff. Right now, mostly what they're censoring that I've noticed is any COVID stuff that's about the lab leak, which is weird. I thought they would be over that by now, but anyway, we are simulcasting on Rumble, and Jay Thomas says, was the goal financial or her own psychological gratification? It seems that some people say, well, she did get some financial gratification from it. She did get some financial benefits from it, but not a whole lot, from what I can tell. That the primary motivation for a lot of these people is the psychological gratification. It's feeling important, feeling powerful, having control over other people, gaining a following, like becoming a cult leader, having people do your bidding. They engage in triangulation a lot. Cluster B, triangulation is where they bring in a third person to unknowingly be a part of an attack or something that they're carrying out on someone else. So I'm sure it made her very powerful to do stuff like that. Like a spider, to tell this person this thing about that person, to watch this person then go, to set it in motion, to watch that person then go and attack that person, or they get off on that kind of crap. This is also why I have a low tolerance for them, and I believe in cutting them out of your life completely as much as you can, unless there's a very good reason for an exception. Because even listening to them, even listening to what these people say, they are trying to plant stuff in your head to get you to go and do stuff for other people. I think of them like spiders, and they collect little bits of information like this woman did, collecting little bits of personal information from people. So talking to them is bad, because any little bits of anything that's going on in your life, they will use it. They will use a kernel of truth and spin lies around it. And the kernel of truth is what makes people think, oh, this must be true. So telling them stuff is dangerous, and listening to them is dangerous, because they will drop things. They will drop things that they think you want to hear. If they know that there's someone you don't like, they will drop little things about that person that may or may not be true to try and set you off on a path against that person. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, they're just constantly weaving manipulations. So personal gratification, I think, is why this person was doing it. Power Keg Greg here with the spitting the truth. In the end, it won't save them from God's wrath. No. And yeah, there's so many verses in the Bible. I should bring up some of these to help protect yourself against people like this. There's a great one. Let me see. Let me bring up this Bible verse. And I do have a list of things we're going to look through. Good advice, like secular advice on protecting yourself from people like this. Okay, Exodus 14:14. When you are the target of one of their vicious campaigns, like feminist misogynist was here, this verse I think is very helpful. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent. You have only to be silent. That verse is so important. If you're a believer, I think you probably know what I'm talking about, like thinking about that. There's a time to speak. There is a time to speak. There is a time to speak truth to power, to evil, to darkness. There is a time to expose darkness. But there's also a time just to be silent and let darkness expose itself. Just let evil twist itself up and expose itself. You don't have to fight every lie they say. You don't have to. In fact, you don't even have to know about it or pay attention to it. God will fight for you. God will fight for you. I believe that. I've seen it happen. Little Ragamuffin. Hey, girl. She says there's always a motive for their words and actions. Their words are poison and can do way more damage than physical acts. Yes. I don't let them that's why I have such a low threshold for like I can't have you near me. I'm trying to take this. Ann Pinkofa made this scarf, which is a beautiful scarf, but I think it's caught on my necklace. I'm trying to take it off. I don't think I can. Okay, we're just gonna lay here for the rest of the show. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's look through some more of this, because I do want to get to the tactics. Well, here's Hillary Crowder talking about some of it, and she's talking about abuse. One of the negative impacts of this woman and what she was doing to people. And Hillary says, I'm not piling on for the sake of piling on. I don't think people understand how many women have made serious life choices based off of this fake account, advocating for a type of marriage that doesn't exist, a dominant, controlling man who decides what you eat, what you listen to, a man you cannot ever say no to, ever, but who's also loving and makes all the right, perfect decisions for you, so you live in your perfect feminine energy. I think very likely there are women that entered into or stayed in abusive situations because of the lie that she peddled and how she claimed it worked for her. It is understandable to think, maybe if I submit more to this abuse, not knowing it's abuse, this relationship will work. And then Hillary says, my DMs are open if this happened to you and you want to share. And I'm sure that did happen, because this woman would post a lot of stuff about, do you remember back when the neo-Nazi Theobro pastors were saying stuff about how women should get their husband's permission even to read a book? And if your husband told you to wear a red dress every day for a year or something, you should do it because you submit, And first of all, those things are ridiculous, because there's such a thing as a husband abusing his authority in the home. And you're giving examples where a husband is abusing, okay? Where it's like he inexplicably is like, you can only wear red from now on. Like, okay, something's a little weird, right? So there were people who were saying stuff like that. They were saying this stuff like, you should get your husband's permission. First of all, I don't have to get my husband's permission because we're so close. He knows everything I'm reading. That's so dumb to be like, oh, I've got to put in a request with the husband. Like, no, if it's working the way it should, if he has concerns about something that I'm reading, he is not afraid to, and he is the authority in our household. He's not afraid to tell me what he thinks about that thing. I mean, that hasn't come up, thankfully, but if it ever did, it wouldn't be something where he's like not going to say something to me. If I have concerns about something he's reading or consuming, I have learned I should voice that instead of not voicing it. So, he wants me to voice it, which is good. And I'm glad that we explicitly made that known, that it's okay for me to say that, like that's the way it should work. It's not something where like these guys are like, oh, you got to go to your husband and ask permission to read a book. But she was saying stuff like that. She was co-signing all of this crazy stuff coming out, and she was co-signing it. And so Hillary's point is right, that there were probably women who were like, oh, I guess I should just, it works for her, and she has this perfect life, fake perfect life. Fake perfect life. Look at this one. This is one of the ones where she was lecturing people about maintaining a slender weight while she was secretly obese. Well, actually, this is someone making fun of it. And then, okay, this is the tweet where she said, T, that's her fake husband, Tony. T just had to carry me up to our room because I ate too much chicken and dumplings. There's perks to keeping your weight down, ladies. Laughing face, laughing face, laughing face. This kind of a tweet would have been a red flag for me anyway if somebody does too many of these, because it's like, it's not funny enough to justify the tweet. It's not funny enough to justify. It's sort of like, is this just a humble brag that you're skinny? Is that all this is? Like, okay. Why are you sharing this? 4 people retweeted that? What? Anyway, so she shared that even though she's did not keep her weight down and does not have a husband. And, this woman, I love this woman making fun of it. She's like, "When did you know, Anon?" I don't know, maybe when the woman who eats at Sonic at least 3 times a week, because apparently she was always taking pictures of her food that she got from Sonic. The woman who eats at Sonic at least 3 times a week and drinks out of a CC's plastic cup, has forearms and knuckles that would make Popeye blush, and whose favorite food group is pie, posted this. In all reality, this person has more mental issues than the one that would compel her to go full Scamanda on the internet. Short of stealing money, she appears not to have done that. No, what boggles my mind is that she hates being fat so much, but feels so little control that she photographed her bad diet, put it on the internet, and then made up excuses as to why she had to eat it on an anonymous account. Like, why? Sis, you clearly knew you could be whoever you wanted to be on here. Why not pretend to live the lifestyle that comes with being skinny? Or is she really just that ignorant? Like, duh, you can't eat nerds clusters and giant buckets of popcorn and ramen and candies all the time and be skinny. You bashed actual moms about their weight while being the size of a baby buffalo yourself. I like the woman who, like, she just took her to task. She just laid it out straight. Like, come on, girl. There are others here. I don't have to show all these. There are ones where, she had weird formatting. She would share texts that people had sent her, her family had sent her, and they were fake. She was writing them to herself, and there were no timestamps on. So people were noticing stuff like this. But let's get into how to deal with someone like this. I found this great article. There's so much, and there's so many books I can recommend. If you are someone who wants book recommendations, let me know in the comments, and I'll name some of the ones I found to be the best about cluster B personality disorders. There's a lot of great resources online, and this is one that I found from just a psychotherapist who writes about cluster B. Um, let's see if you guys can see this. Disarming narcissistic manipulators, self-defense against psychological abuse. And this is actually a fairly recent piece. So I'm going to read through a lot of this because a lot of this is just spot on, and it needs to be, I couldn't say it better in my own words. So let me just read through some of this. Manipulators are individuals who use covert tactics to control or exploit others for selfish purposes, often without the target's awareness. Survivors of childhood abuse, particularly those who experience narcissistic parenting or scapegoating, may be more vulnerable to manipulation due to normalized dysfunctional behaviors and low self-esteem. This is 100% true. This is why I said I understand why some people are bad judges of character, because they've been abused by a cluster B person over and over and over again, and they haven't woken up from it yet. Like, they're still in that toxic cycle of being used and abused by one. And these kind of predators can smell that, like, just like they can, people who want to abuse kids can smell that if it's in a kid's past, like they can exploit that and make you a multiple victim of it. So this is true. You can be more vulnerable to it, but let me tell you this, if you wake up to it, if you wake up to cluster B abuse, cluster B personality disorder, you will become the exact opposite. It's almost like once you see it for what it was and how it was used against you, and you're willing to fully admit that and be humble and be like, yes, I was taken advantage of. Yes, this happened. Yes, I fell for this. Yes, I was part of this in whichever way I was part of it. Like, once you do that, it's like you have a superpower because you can see it much faster than most people can because you've been through it. Once that happens, you're like, oh, I can spot this a mile away. I don't want you anywhere near me. Like, pirate. Pirate says if you're not cluster B, smash the like. I thought you were gonna say if you are. Some of them are here hate watching Pirate. If you are cluster B, hit the dislike. Okay, we'll continue. Manipulators often display traits of empathy impairment or cluster B personality disorders: narcissistic, antisocial, borderline, or histrionic. Those are the 4 cluster B disorders, each employing different strategies to manipulate. Common tactics include gaslighting. That's when they tell you that the truth is not the truth. That's when they tell you, don't believe your lying eyes. That's when they can be confronted with absolute set in stone evidence and they will still lie to your face and say, that's not true. Like, that's not true. Gaslighting. Guilt tripping, emotional blackmail, and criticism. Abuse survivors may struggle with trauma bonds. Yes, this is where they try and bond with you over going through something traumatic together. Either that you both experience, like this woman, Patriarchy Hannah, pretended she made up all this trauma to bond with people who've actually been through that trauma, or she listened to their stories of trauma, pulled it out of them, and then sold those stories as her own to manipulate other women. So, but you feel like you've shared that with that person and you have that bond now. Sometimes it's a trauma bond that you go through together, where they will put you on a pedestal at first, and what's called love bombing. Everything you do is wonderful and you're amazing, and they talk about how great you are, and they talk about how great you are publicly, and they put you on a pedestal, and they just talk about how much they've learned from you, and you're so amazing and wonderful, and you did this for them, and you did that for them, and it's over the top. You can start to notice this too when it's weird and over the top, and be like, wait a minute. So it's like over the top, and then it's the exact opposite. They attack you, they criticize you, it just switches. It's called the devaluation period, where they're doing all the opposite. You're the worst, you wear a crown of poop, like, it's just like they go completely the other way. Now, if this happens in a relationship with someone you're romantically involved with, a lot of times what happens is you are going through trauma bonding with them in real time, because you're trying to figure out what's happening. Why is everything up is down, down is up? They hate you now. And then they come back to you and love bomb you again. And so you're going through this cycle of pain and grief, and then being peppered with love again and feeling euphoria, and then pain and grief. And so all of that is causing this weird, negative, toxic bond with them. A good example of that might be a highly publicized, in the public eye example, I would say would be Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. If you looked at the details of that court case and their relationship, they just trauma bonded together all the time. So codependency, yes. False hope that the manipulator will change. That keeps a lot of people in these abusive relationships with these people, which makes them more susceptible. To protect oneself, it's important to trust your instincts, set boundaries, and avoid emotional involvement with manipulators. I could not underline this enough. Trust your instincts. A lot of these women in the spaces and on X, and I just read you the bare minimum. There's all these women coming forward with the stories of what she did to them. A lot of them said there were red flags, or my gut told me this, or my gut told me that. But they were like, but I didn't have anything specific to, my gut said she was bad news bears. But I didn't want to be what if the story she was telling was real, and I didn't want to be the person who cut her out, and oh my goodness, do they prey on that when we're like that? I can say this as someone who's been there, where it's like, well, I don't want to be mean, or I'm going to continue giving this person access to myself. No, your gut has evolved the way that it's evolved for a reason. It pings for a reason. It's the example I've often heard, and I think Jordan Peterson was the first person I heard give this example, about how a baby monkey who has never seen a snake before will still freak out the first time they see a snake. They know to be afraid the first time they see a snake. It's in their DNA. Like, they've evolved to know that is get away, right? Your gut is telling you something for a reason. And what I've learned is you want to verify your gut later, but you don't ever want to ignore it. So this is what I've learned through mistakes and not doing the right thing, or saying, well, my gut says that, but I don't really know why, and I don't have anything concrete to point to, so I'm going to ignore it. No. Now what I do is I say, I'm going to listen to that, and I'm going to watch, and I'm going to see. And 9 times out of 10, a year, 2 years down the road, it's like, oh, that person is a complete monster. Like, my gut was right. It was right. I'm so glad I never let them slide into my DMs or try and start a friendship with me or whatever. I'm so glad I kept them at an arm's length. I've been through that. I've been through that where people have created a friendship with me. I've learned through that mistake of letting a snake get close to me. I'm saying this to you. Trust your gut. This is right. Trust your instincts. Set boundaries. Avoid emotional involvement with manipulators. Don't tell them anything of any importance about you at all. Nothing. There's a cluster B person that I'm low contact with. I have a good reason why I'm not no contact. And I just keep it friendly, and I keep it brief and nothing of importance though. It's just like the weather and how are you? Good, great. That's it. Like, that's just the bare surface level. You want to become if you read the literature about this, it's called gray rock. You want to become completely boring to them also. Like, you don't want to give them anything about you in conversation. You want to be the gray man who's just like, when they're like trying to pry for personal things, and trying to get you to open up about stuff. And it's just like, I can talk about nothing forever if I have to with a person like that. If I'm forced to be around a person like that, who I don't trust. Yes, good grief has an example. So sometimes you're forced to be around these people. There's a good reason because you're their coworker or something. Good grief says if you're in the arts, you're forced to be in contact with them. Keep on their good side. Yes, I stay pleasant with them if I have to be. Like, stay pleasant, but don't do any type of emotional, intimate bonding. Nothing. So they end up thinking you're just like super boring, which is great. Okay, let's continue. Manipulators are people who are not on the level when it comes to their intentions towards others. They use indirect, covert, and psychological deception tactics to exploit or control people for selfish gain, often without the target's awareness and certainly without their permission. In this respect, they can be deviously conniving imposters and masters of the art of impression management. They're very concerned with what others think of them. Impression management is the be all end all. They don't have any shame or remorse about hurting you, but they wouldn't want the majority of people to believe that they hurt you. They care what the majority of people think. If you watch this new O.J. Simpson docuseries, it's underlined in episode 1, I think it was, or maybe 2. He cared so much about what people thought about him. His sports agent said, that was the be all end all. That was the holy grail for him, is like public opinion and people thinking he was a good guy. Impression management. By the way, this is, if you want to look up this article, this is this psychotherapist. Her name is Glynis Sherwood. And just based on this piece, I think she's with it. So Glynis Sherwood, that's her name. Many people can be taken in by manipulators, but childhood abuse survivors may be particularly at risk due to these influences, due to experiencing similar dynamics in their childhood homes, such as narcissistic parenting or scapegoating. Survivors may be programmed to normalize or accommodate manipulative behaviors and or struggle with self-doubt and confidence that undermines assertiveness. See, a lot of times if you grew up with someone like this, you were created to be a pleaser. And you were, yes, pre-groomed username. You were created to be a pleaser, to be very concerned with not the opinions, the actual, like, the feelings of others, and also with keeping things copacetic, like being a peacemaker, cleaning up chaos, and trying to avoid drama, which is funny because if you don't break out of this cycle in adulthood, manipulators like Patriarchy Hannah will come in and smell this in you and make you part of their drama that they're doing on other people. Do you know what I mean? Like, she will make you a part of it because you want to please. This makes childhood relationship abuse survivors more vulnerable to being exploited in adulthood by manipulators. You're also, if you grew up as a child in this kind of abusive home, you are a caretaker. A lot of times you were, there was a degree of parentification that happened where you were treated like you were the adult, even though you were the child. But there's an adult in the house, or more than one adult in the house, who's behaving like a child. And so kids who grew up around this, a lot of times they are the caretaker. And so a manipulator like Patriarchy Hannah can come in and do sob stories. This is what they do a lot in therapy, is they do these sob stories, and they'll have a therapist who plays caretaker, or they'll find you to play caretaker. And the whole time, their whole thing is to turn you into a pit bull flying monkey for them. Is to take advantage of, like, you feeling like, oh my gosh, poor Patriarchy Hannah. She can't catch a break. Everyone's always attacking her. Why? She's got so many different people coming after her and asking questions, and I need to defend her. I need to take care of her. I need to make sure she's feeling good. Like, that's what that's like. All manipulators tend to use calculated psychological tactics to gradually gain the trust of their target, ultimately aiming to exploit, abuse, or control them. Manipulation takes forethought, even a few moments, so they know what they're doing. They do. The differences between different kinds of manipulators is based on motivation, intent, desired outcomes, and mental health status. Understanding these different types of manipulators and their tactics can help individuals recognize manipulative behaviors in relationships and protect themselves from emotional harm. Psychological profiles of manipulators. Empathy impaired, she says, is a term I coined to describe individuals who do not meet the criteria for a mental health, such as a personality disorder diagnosis, but they still engage in selfish, insensitive, and entitled behavior on a subclinical level. So she's sort of saying, they have less empathy than normal, but she wouldn't say they have a full-blown personality disorder. They tend to be immature adults who objectify others outside of their peer reference group due to socialization, cultural, religious indoctrination, and rationalization. They lack a lack of critical thinking skills. For example, fundamentalist religious groups who tend to view women as naturally subservient to men. Okay. Naturally subservient? We'd have to pick apart this language a little bit. We'd have to pick apart what she means by that and what she thinks she means by that. But if she's calling out what I think she is, which is religions or cult-like environments that are okay with the abuse of women and the control of women, abusive control of women, then I would agree with her. And those do exist. May also include people with dark triad and dark tetrad feature, or even complex trauma. In addition to the empathy impaired, habitual manipulators may possess traits of, or the full-blown cluster B personality disorders. And then she has all four of them: narcissistic, antisocial, borderline, histrionic. People with cluster B personality disorders rationalize manipulation via rigid internal traits of, here we go, here's some of the hallmarks: entitlement. They're entitled to do this to you. They don't care at all who they hurt. Grandiosity. They're always bragging about how big and important they are. Online on social media, you'll see they're always talking about how many followers they have and how many you don't have if you disagree with them. Or they'll, it's funny because on the one hand, they'll use the number of people who follow them as something to brag about. But then if they're going to attack somebody who has more followers, they'll say, all that person cares about is their fault. Like, it's like, but either way, they talk about numbers of followers a lot. Like, they obsess over it. It's something they think about a lot. Grandiosity in terms of, and it's something they think about when they look at every other person, whether that person has more or less, like, it matters to them. It's a numbers thing. They care about it. Grandiose. They're like, their importance is measured by it. They're always saying things like, I was the first one to do da 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 da. One person told me once, no one has done more to save Western civilization than I have. I'm sorry, I just remembered that. They say crazy stuff. Like Andrew Tate, he's one of these cluster B people. He says in seriousness that he is the smartest man in the world. They say crazy, grandiose things. Sometimes it's funny because it's so grandiose. Oh my gosh. Okay. The smartest man in the world. He said he's God. He also said that. Um, a lack of empathy. That's a huge characteristic of them. They really don't care if they hurt you or if they hurt anyone. There's no human feeling there for you. They only view other people in a utility way, like utility friendships. When Aristotle talked about the different kinds of friendships, they only view people as something to be used to gain something. You're like an object to them. These disordered traits are seen as facts to be catered to. As such, cluster Bs have a self-gratification focus, such as love, attention, admiration, security, power, money, status, sexual conquest, etc. Yes, they're always focused on acquiring these things that they want, that they view as they view these things as valuable. They put a lot of value in these. And they think you do too, because they think most of them, not all of them, most of them think everyone's like them. I've truly come to believe that they think the same way that normal people don't believe that cluster B exists, or they can't fathom why would somebody make up a husband and 14 kids, like they can't fathom it because they think everyone's normal like they are. Well, cluster B thinks everyone's cluster B. They really do think, I think some of them really do think that everyone's like this, that everyone's just like, they know they're full of shit and they think you are too. It's like that guy in my comments who was like, who cares if she made up a husband and 14 kids and conned thousands of people? Everybody does it. Like, what? What are you talking about? Why would you think that that's normal? Is it because you do stuff like that? For cluster B folks, the value of any relationship is contingent on the non-reciprocal devotion and sacrifice by others to their well-being. Yes. And they will employ an arsenal of manipulative strategies to gain access to narcissistic supply. Furthermore, once secured, any threats to this supply, whether real or imagined, will be met with manipulation tactics by the cluster B perpetrator. Personality disordered individuals all engage in manipulative interpersonal strategies, but for different reasons. So this is, according to her, she thinks this is some of the different reasons for doing it. Narcissists, to secure supply from others, i.e. attention, sex, admiration, emotional support, a safe home environment, etc. NPDs tend not to see their behavior as manipulative, but as helping them to get what they deserve. See, they think that they're sort of like social justice ideology, or like cluster B kind of ideology. They think the means or the ends justify the means. The ends are that they deserve all of this, so any means necessary to get it. And there are some ideologies that are like that. Woke is like that. Social justice is like that. It says, the ends are so good that it's okay for us to be racist and sexist to get there. Like, the foundation for this attitude and behavior is a self-serving absence of empathy. Covert narcissists are particularly prone to manipulation strategies, whereas overts tend to be more direct in their self-serving demands of others. The covert narcissists, oftentimes, they're the ones that you might at first think that they are someone who just has, is particularly put upon, like the Job. You might think this person, oh my goodness, what, everybody's always, they have 100 different squabbles and dramas, and where they work, there's squabbles and dramas. They tend to get fired a lot. They don't maintain friendships. Their best friend is gone within a year, then they got a new best friend. Like there's no one that's like long-term across the span of their life, unless it's a person that's been completely under their thumb. The coverts are always going on about like, poor me. They do a lot of the DARVO, the reverse victim offender. They claim to be the victim of all the things that they do to other people. A lot of times they're the ones that are also like, why not me? There's a lot of resentment there. Why not me? I knew one who was very jealous and resentful of Jordan Peterson randomly and was like always on about it. And I was like, why is that person always talking crap about Peterson? And it was very much into like, I should be that famous. Like, it was very much like that. It was resentment. It was jealousy. It was envy. It was gross. It was gross. Why not me? That's the covert narcissist. Antisocials. Okay. To achieve exploitative goals such as money, sex, power, status, position, property, influence, etc., the antisocials know they're being manipulative. They feel entitled to be this way due to deep feelings of superiority and contempt towards others. I think they have a lot in common with the narcissists, honestly. That's why I think all of these are just so commingled. It doesn't really matter. Contempt towards others who they blame for the victimizing behavior. Antisocial types possess zero empathy and view others as objects to be used and discarded once they're no longer useful. They see the world as dog eat dog and therefore normalize their ruthless behavior. I mean, I think both of these apply to what she did to people, Patriarchy Hannah. Borderlines. This could also apply, who knows. To entice others to manage or caretake their emotions, which they feel ill-equipped to regulate. Like narcissists and antisocials, BPDs are also use intermittent reinforcement, like running hot or cold on you, to manage splitting between abandonment versus engulfment anxiety with others. For BPDs, manipulation is more of a byproduct of emotional distress rather than an exploitative tactic. I don't know if I agree with that, actually. I don't know. I mean, I know that's what they say about borderlines, but I think a lot of times they know that it's a manipulative tactic. Borderlines are like the crazy girlfriend who you try to break up with and they threaten to self-harm to stop you from doing it. You know, they know that that's manipulative. They may feel all the emotions they feel while threatening it, but they still know they're manipulating you. I know someone who had a borderline ex who made up, like Patriarchy Hannah, made up a person completely out of thin air, made up stuff that happened with this person. I know another one who made up a death in the family. Like, they will lie about anything. They know they're lying too. So I don't see all that much of a difference between these groups. Histrionics, to influence others to baby them or make them the center of attention. HPDS see themselves as a prince or princess entitled to being taken care of by others. They act dramatically in an attempt to make themselves the center of attention. Grandiosity, again, grandiosity, entitlement, low empathy. It's all the same things. They tend to be very, these guys are very, the histrionics, I have seen them described as being more, oh gosh, what's the word? They like to act out sexually publicly. Types of manipulators and their tactics. So then she breaks it all down into the ones who do this over and over. I'm going to skip past this because I want to get to some of the things they do instead of being so concerned with how often they do it. Let me skip down to this and then we're going to look at tactics to disarm these people. Gaslighting. This is predominantly an antisocial strategy, as narcissists and borderlines believe the fantasies they're trying to lure others into. Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's a strategy of all of them. Let's just move on to what it is. It assumes an imbalance of power. The gaslighter presents as mentally authoritative with the ability to define reality. Gaslighting is designed to deceive the target via distorting and denying facts, memories, events, etc., so the target loses their sense of reality. For example, the gaslighter denies their negative behaviors. They do, even when it's right there in black and white. And then claims that the target's memory seems to be impaired. Or worse, they say the target did what I'm accused of doing, what I did. Gaslighters are able to tell the difference between reality and fantasy. The gaslighter usually starts small, instilling doubt regarding facts, and then ratchets it up to break the target's grasp of reality. Once the target's undermined this way, the gaslighter is in control. Okay, here's another tactic. Charm offensives. Charming manipulators employ exploitative behaviors such as seduction to steal what they lack, character and empathy to earn honestly. These heart thieves are opportunists and attune manipulation to the target's unmet emotional needs. For example, showering a lonely person with attention. Two types occupy this space, the love bomber and the flatterer. The love bomber plies their target with exaggerated affection, attention, gifts to create an intense emotional connection. This tactic is often used to build emotional dependency and trust quickly, only to later manipulate the victim. The flatterer is a close cousin of the love bomber, using excessive compliments and charm. This manipulator seeks to lower the guard of their target, making them more susceptible to their influence. This is what I was talking about when you see an abusive person like this online, and you see them, in your opinion, they are being abusive to others, but they treat you nicely or they flatter you. And so you're like, well, I don't know if I want to say anything because they haven't done it to me. But it's like, why do you think they're flattering you? Why do you think they haven't done it to you yet? These approaches are the terrain of all cluster Bs, but for widely divergent purposes. For antisocials, it's a deliberate con job. Yeah, I'm not going to read this part. I don't necessarily agree with all these, like the 4 different types do it for different reasons. There's the future fakers. This is where they make big promises about what they can do for you or will do for you in the future, selling false hopes. This is like Patriarchy Hannah lying to these infertile women and telling them she's going to help hook them up with an adoption. Future fakers. Guilt trippers. They weaponize false guilt, making others feel responsible for their emotional state or circumstances. This can include statements like, if you really cared about me, you would, to converse compliance. Or they'll say like, a real friend would, Guilt is used to induce a sense of moral failure and obligation in targets, and therefore to make them feel responsible to fix the problem the guilt tripper has fabricated or created. I've seen this one so many times too. This one is somewhat related to what's called loan sharking, where if they have means, they will sometimes buy you things or do things for you financially, or some type of gift or something, so that later they can call in the loan. Later, if you start to see red flag behavior from them and think this is a bad person, like I want to distance myself, they'll be like, hey, do you remember that time that I bought you XYZ, or I did this for you, or I helped you in that situation? They call in the loan. It's closely related to the guilt tripping thing. That's why also I'm like, I don't do none of that for me. If I have like red flags from you, I don't want any of that. If I have red flags from you. I've learned that the hard way. Silent treatment, a form of guilt tripping. By stonewalling as a form of punishment for counterfeit slights, this manipulator enforces the victim to seek reconciliation on the manipulator's terms, effectively employing false guilt to control the dynamics of the relationship. This happens more if it's someone you know intimately, probably like a romantic relationship or some other close relationship, where they will give you the silent treatment. Sometimes some of these people can do this for days, weeks, hanging up on you repeatedly like a child, losing their temper, screaming at you, hanging up, and then not talking to you for days like a child, until you're supposed to be, again, they're taking advantage of you. And if you're a person that has a normal amount of empathy, you're like, what, did I do something that led to that? Let me figure out what I did. Like, they want you to come groveling and beg them back. And even though they're the person that's, you know what I mean? Like, they're the ones that's doing this. You have to get out of these kind of relationships. You can't stay in them. You have to learn from them. If you've been in one, don't beat yourself up for it. Just learn from it. Like, how did I let that happen? And then learn from it and don't let it happen again. Gotchas. Gotchas are verbal put downs designed to trick an individual and expose them to ridicule. Gotchas employ false guilt to insinuate that the target has been caught in the act of being dishonest, immoral, lying, etc. It's a twisted attempt to embarrass, expose, or disgrace someone to compel them to yield to the manipulator's agenda. Criticism and contempt. Once the love bombing is over, this is the devaluation period I talked about. Once the love bombing is over, the manipulator may seek to destabilize and control the target further through creeping criticism, culminating in contempt. It does start this way too. It starts with creeping criticism. It ends with just outright complete obsession and harassment and stalking and crazy just encouraging others to harass and attack you. Like it's so funny that, there's the on the pedestal period and then love bombing period. And that is then, starts with the creeping criticism. Yes, there's someone doing this to James Lindsay right now. Yes. And it started with creeping criticism. The love bombing period lasted a long time, the ass kissing period, and then it was creeping criticism, and now it's just outright obsession and stalking and harassment of him. For example, quote, "I like you better in that other dress," making you feel unsure of your attractiveness. I know some women who've experienced this with abusive spouses, where it started like this. It started with these little slights and digs that a loved one would not say to you like that, would not try to plant that down in your head, would not try to give you a backhanded compliment or an insult. It can then proceed to routine fault finding and eventually to put downs and then contempt. The end goal is to undermine the self-confidence of the target by inducing self-doubt and insecurity and making them worry about the relationship with the manipulator. I haven't looked at the chat in a little bit because I'm trying to get through this, but I know there are people who identify with this one, and I am sorry. I am so sorry if you've been in any kind of a close relationship with someone who did this to you. People who love you don't talk to you like this. Let me say, this is for men and women. Men and women. This doesn't, I'm going to read this for a second. Sometimes I'm like, maybe we should do a relationship podcast about like all the mistakes I've made. Like how to not do what I've done, or and both mistakes things I've done wrong and things that are wrong that have been done to me, both, right? I'll say this to you. The person who has pledged to God, taken a vow to God to love you and to take care of you and to protect you and to have your six, if that person is making cutting comments to you, contemptuous comments, there's almost nothing worse than contempt in a relationship. I've read statistics about this, about how married couples can overcome almost anything except for contempt. If they start to develop contempt for each other, it's almost impossible to come back from it. And if you are married to someone who is, or in a relationship dating someone who is, or in a close friendship with someone who's doing this to you, and you're like, am I imagining this, or are they like putting me down all the time? I know women who've been in relationships like this. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people. I know men who've been in relationships like this. And if the person is always putting you down and saying these little things to make you doubt your self-worth, but then they love bomb you after, oh, but I love you. Why'd you take that so seriously? Why'd you get offended? And then they do it again and again. But these little digs that are meant to make you feel stupid or ugly, or to lower your self-confidence, like that person is not your friend. It's almost like the scripture, the scripture about judging people by their fruits. You judge how a person loves you by action and behavior and how they treat you, not by what they say. So if they are being abusive in that way and they're being nasty and they're saying mean things to you and about how dumb you are or whatever, and then later saying, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. No, you've let someone really dangerous next to you. Yes, a backbiter, Joshua. And this doesn't mean that people don't we all sin. So it doesn't mean that you're never going to mistreat your spouse. Of course you are. We all are. But it means if there's a pattern of repeated behavior, if all the fruit on that tree is rotten, if this is how they treat you, like, and it gets worse, and they don't recognize it, and they don't apologize for it, and it's never something that they notice as a problem, like, then you're in a relationship with a manipulator. If they're telling you one thing and treating you like crap. John says, friends are like buttons on an elevator that can either take you up or take you down. Choose wisely. That's excellent. That's a great way of putting it, John. And so if you're confused because you're with a gaslighter at friendship, or marriage or dating or whatever, and they're gaslighting you and they're treating you one way, but they're telling you they feel a different way. They're telling you they feel amazing things, but they're treating you crazy, awful things. Again, to bring it back to the O.J. Simpson documentary, he was all about how much he loved Nicole. He loved her so much. He loved her so much, right? But he just kept physically abusing her. He kept attacking her. So it doesn't matter what you say. It matters what you do. How do you love? Yes, little ragamuffin. It's worse when there's never an apology, but you're the one always apologizing. Yes, because they groomed you, possibly. Maybe you met them when you were young. Maybe they groomed you to be that way, or maybe you previously were abused when you were a child or something, so they can tell that you're a pleaser, but they get you in that position where they are doing the horrible things and somehow you are groveling to get them out of their silent treatment nasty period, right? Yeah. Justice for Nicole says, good grief. Yeah, justice. That, it'll make you, I mean, that watching that docuseries, like I said, I've seen a lot on that case. I even read his book. If I did it, I read his book years ago. I mean, I know the ins and outs of that case and what a sociopath he was, O.J. Simpson. But if you watch this it'll get all righteous rage riled up again. Like, it makes me so angry that he got off. Ugh. Ugh. Pirate Tomsky. I'm not usually one to watch true crime. Yeah, my husband's not either, but he was interested in this one because, well, I think maybe it's a short one. And I think it's only 4 episodes, and also it takes you right back to what was happening then at the 90s. And also it helps you with all these years in between to sort of understand, at least with me, I understand a little better how they snowballed the jury. Robert Lowry. Member for 17 months. Give it up for Robert, one of our mods. He says, this message is probably not loan sharking. Okay, then I'll accept it. You're going to call, hey, remember that time? Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you for the laugh. That was a good laugh. Oh, Pirate says, but my comment above was that I did watch this one. Oh, okay. I missed that. He says, I can't believe I watched the same true crime documentary as Carrie. It's a good one, man. And again, I can't help but notice the cluster B stuff in it. When you get those little interactions with him, when you get to see OJ in that footage, because they televised that court case. And when you get to see, like, whenever any of his dream team of lawyers was making an argument, I like to watch his face, because there was so much smugness on his face, and he was loving it. Like, he was whenever one of them was sort of doing well in their argument, or being sometimes just being, I thought, really unfair, he would just be like laughing over there, like, just, yeah, there's a lot of observation of his behaviors that you can do in this documentary, especially with some of the clips that they included from the civil trial when he did testify. And you know what people said about him? People said, and at the beginning of the docuseries, you can see this. He was good at the love bombing. He wanted people to like him and to trust him and to think he was a normal human. When they first met him, people were like, oh, even though he was so famous and he was all these, he made you feel seen or special or whatever. And he learned how to do that over the course of his life to appear normal. A lot of these people, look at Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy's a great example. He learned how to appear normal. He volunteered at a suicide prevention hotline to help people. Think about that. As part of his facade and his mask of being a normal, empathetic person. Oh my goodness. Squat and Pee says, I believe he did it, but my spouse doesn't. I can't go down that rabbit hole right now, but girl, I'll have to do a whole, maybe I should just finally do a true crime episode. I don't know. I don't want to change the focus of the show, but sometimes I do want to do it. Look, he did it. You know what they didn't even include in this documentary, Squat and Pee? Go look this up and show it to your husband. I'm going to give you one thing that's not even in this documentary. The shoe prints, the shoe impressions, they were a very specific, fancy, expensive kind of Italian shoe. And he's a size 12, which like only 9% of the population is a size 12. And they went to this Italian shoe manufacturer and they had only ever made like 200 and something pair in a size 12 of that shoe. So it could only be one of 200 and something people in the world that did the murders, that had that left those shoe impressions in the blood there at the crime scene. And in the civil trial, they asked him about this. This was not included in the documentary, by the way, but it should have been. They asked him about those shoes, and he lied and said he never had those. He would never have those shoes. They were ugly ass shoes. That's what he said. He was full of contempt and just talking out his butt. I would never have those shoes. Those are ugly ass shoes. So then they pulled up records and they pulled up photos of him wearing the shoes at different sporting events he was hosting. And they were like, isn't this a picture of you wearing that very same brand of shoes you just said you didn't own and wouldn't own? And he had to admit, yeah, okay, that's me. Like, that's the shoes. Look it up. Look it up. You may not have heard about those. I don't even remember if they made it into the criminal case or not, the shoes. I think they may have made it in, but not the picture. Anyway, they made it into the civil case. Yeah. Yeah. Ugh. And same thing with the glove that he said didn't fit. You know, his sports agent is in the documentary saying, I told him beforehand, don't take your arthritis medicine. And he was like, well, if I don't take it, my knuckles are going to get all swollen and big. And he was like, yeah, exactly. Like, don't take it for a few days. And then not to mention that those gloves, he's been photographed wearing those, holding microphones at sporting events. Like, he owned those gloves, that brand of glove. Give me a break. Okay. Sorry, I didn't want to go down the OJ, but I'm watching it at the same time. And again, all of this stuff is related, like cluster B, it's everywhere in our society. If not with like individuals, like if you watch true crime, you're going to see a lot of cluster B, obviously, but not just with individuals, but with our government. I mean, our government lies to us all the time and gaslights us. The media does it all the time. Think about the COVID years. These are like big cluster B years where they're just completely lying to us and censoring doctors and scientists and not letting us have real information and gaslighting us and telling us we're crazy for coming to the most reasonable conclusion about certain things, like the origins of the virus. Okay, we're continuing to some of the tactics. Projection and playing the victim. This is the psychological term for blame shifting, aka accusing others of one's own faults. So I already went through this at the beginning of the video. This is that DARVO thing they do, deny and reverse victim offender. And I explained to you at the very beginning when I was talking about Justin Trudeau and the Canadian government and the Freedom Convoy. They like to do this because to any observers, it just looks like that two Spider-Men pointing at each other meme. And so they don't know who any casual observer they're banking on won't look too closely. And they'll say, well, I don't know, it's two people or two organizations or two groups of people both calling each other psychopaths or both calling each other authoritarians in the case of Trudeau and the truckers. Lying, denial, and rationalizing. They distort the truth either by outright lies or by withholding critical information, refusing to acknowledge wrongdoing or responsibility. They will never accept responsibility for wrongdoing. Never. Justifying inappropriate behavior and attitudes with excuses, minimization, denial, and blame shifting. What was it I saw recently? If you remember this in the chat, please remind me. There was somebody in an episode I was doing where they said, I'm going to take responsibility for this. And then in their next breath, they put it off on someone else. If you can remember what that was about, give me that example because it's in the back of my mind now. But it's like, even when they say, I'm putting out a press release, a statement, I'm going to take responsibility of this. It was so-and-so's fault. Like, That just happened. I'm trying to remember who that was. They're like, "I'm here to take responsibility. They did it, or they made me do it." Yeah, they won't ever. Yes, Jen, they won't ever hold themselves accountable. Antisocials know they are distorting or denying the truth, but feel entitled to use whatever means, no matter how devious or immoral, to achieve their goals. Now, I don't agree with her on this, as mentioned, because she distinguishes she sets apart the antisocials from the narcissist, borderline histrionics, and say that they live in a fantasy world and they deny reality in service of their fantasy, and maybe they've snowed themselves, like they believe their own lies. I don't buy that. I think they know they're lying. Infantilizing. With the exception of female borderlines, cluster Bs feel superior to others and have an inflated sense of self that's not reflected in reality. As such, they tend to infantilize their targets, viewing them as less intelligent, capable, knowledgeable, sophisticated, or worthy of themselves. Let me tell you, you will notice these people. Some of them have platforms, some of them have followings like Patriarchy Hannah, some of them have podcasts. And if you're not in that, if you haven't been conditioned and you're not in those little pockets, those cults, it's going to be very stark to you when you first see the way they talk to people, because the way they talk to people is like as if everyone they're talking to is dumber than them. They like yell at the people watching them, um, do stuff like, if this audience keeps acting this way, I'm gonna quit. Like as what? As if there's some gift to the world, and they're gonna threaten you with leaving the internet. Okay. Like, who cares? Leave. Like, but they talk this way. They view themselves as way up here. And even like their followers, like their cult followers, if you look at cult leaders, they view those people as dumb and they treat them that way, viewing their targets as less intelligent, capable, knowledgeable, sophisticated, or worthy of themselves. This attitude of false superiority is at the center of all entitled behavior. Male BPDs are particularly prone to employ this tactic as they see themselves as rescuers of their less capable friends, family, or lovers. Threats and violence. When cluster Bs don't get their way with others, no matter how unreasonable, they tend to feel enraged. Their entitled attitude may cause them to threaten, blackmail, punish, or retaliate aggressively towards targets who have frustrated their sense of entitlement or neediness in the case of borderlines. They may imply that dire consequences will follow if their demands are not met, leveraging fear to manipulate compliance. Let me show you what these anonymous accounts have been doing. Now, we don't know for sure if this is Patriarchy Hannah, but it seems very likely that it is. There was an what looks like an alt account that was created that was called Retarded Rapist, she started when she deleted her account and then came back briefly. She started retweeting this person, this random new account that was defending her. And everybody noticed, well, that's probably you under a different name. And then she deleted her account again. And I think that account has since renamed itself. And now there's this new guy who, in the comments of Ryan, the guy who at the very beginning I showed you, he did the comprehensive thread detailing how people came to realize she is a fraud, that this whole account is a fraud, the identity is a fraud. She's been taking advantage of people and scamming people and conning people. His name is Ryan. And so there's this new anonymous sock puppet account that was just created, probably by her, who knows, and talking about threatening, right? So this person, California, says new Patriarchy Hannah account alt account has just dropped. She's doxing the people who outed her. So this person is named Dr. Roxo. There's like a fake picture of a guy there in a hoodie, and he's replying to Ryan and saying, targeting Leah will put crosshairs on your back. Expect us. Expect vengeance. We are here because you're playing in our world now, not for her or her beliefs, but you will soon find out you're not the only one who can play these games. And if you scroll through, I looked at this account, and all he's doing is replying. He is replying to Ryan and threatening him, posting Ryan's address, and name and doxing information and threatening to release, I don't know, more stuff about his family so that he feels unsafe or something, and saying all this stuff like, yes, this stuff that sounds like anonymous, where it's like, expect us, we are legion. I think he actually says in one of his tweets, we are legion. Which, by the way, that's what demons say. We are demons. Good Grief says that's actually hilarious. Yes, but threatening, right? So she like came back, very likely, anyway, I should say, allegedly came back as a couple of these new anonymous accounts and is threatening, and yeah. Okay, let me return to this. We're going back to this article. It's got some great, once we get through these, there's a couple more of the tactics. Shaming. And once we get to the end of these, there's some great suggestions on how to disarm these people. So shaming, using humiliation as a tool. This tactic may be employed to control behavior such as compliance and subservience in their targets. All cluster Bs have deep-seated feelings of inferiority that they ward off by accusing others via projection of their own weaknesses and deficits. Yes, goes right back to that projection thing. Triangulation. Manipulators may involve a third party in conflicts to create division and confusion, thereby ensuring that they maintain control over the narrative and the outcome of disputes. This is what I mentioned earlier, where they will involve a third person. They love setting one person against another person and sitting back and watching things unfold. That's why you can't listen to them about anything. Don't let them spin tales in your ear about other people. And definitely don't tell them anything, ever. In the case of narcissists, antisocials, and borderlines who believe they've been wrong, triangulation may be employed to harm a person's reputation via a lie-based smear campaign. Henchmen, aka flying monkeys, may be engaged to bully, harass, discredit, or keep the target off balance emotionally. This is true. They will use these other people that they have groomed to do that they've groomed through trauma bonding, through loan sharking, through all of, ass kissing, love bombing, whatever. They use those people. And you look at cults and you're like, throughout history, and you're like, why would people stay in that? Well, they were getting something from the cult leader. People said that Charles Manson was excellent at identifying what each of the Manson girls needed from him in terms of love bombing. So for, the girl who was more homely looking, was that Patricia? I'm trying to remember. He was always building her up with how she looked. Like, he was always complimenting her looks because he knew that's what she needed. He made her feel attractive. Yes, Patricia Krenwinkel. She was the one that was like very hairy and insecure about her looks. And he built up her looks. For some of the others, I forget which one, maybe it was Squeaky. There was one of them who, it was intelligence. He made her feel smart. He complimented her about her intelligence. Con artists are really good at trying to identify, anyway. Some, I guess, are better than others. He supposedly was very good at it. But giving these broken, dysfunctional people what it is that they are missing or didn't get, and that's, it attaches these people to them. Because so when you look at those people and you're like, why would they stay in a cult? Why would they do crazy things like this that this person wanted them to do? They were emotionally attached. They were trauma bonded and they were getting something from that person. They were being used. Yes, emotional vampires, says Davina. Shifting the goalposts, changing expectations midway through a situation or after the fact to keep others off balance. This tactic can be part of gaslighting. Okay, I'm going to, they've got some stuff here about families that's really good. But here, we're going to end with this. These are the tips that Glenn Sherwood gives, and I think these are great. I read through these and I was like, this is the one I want to share. So we've already talked about number one, trust your gut. Your gut is there for a reason. It developed for a reason. The more that you hone it, the better. Like, the better it's going to be. So when you notice something, I've gotten to where now I will I will try and remember, like, if I get a bad gut feeling about someone, I will write it down in my journal sometimes even so I don't forget, 'cause I also have a bad memory, and I also like to think the best of people. So I might sometimes forget that, like, wait, something about them really rubbed me the wrong way, and I want to remember, just 'cause I wanna be able to, if something bad ever happens down the road, I can look back and say, "Oh, my gut was right about that," or, "Here's why it was right," or, "Hey, it was wrong." Once in a while, your gut might be wrong. For the most part, I've noticed it's right. So listen to it, trust it. At least, if your gut is pinging that something's wrong, something's off with someone, it doesn't mean you have to cut them off or anything. It just means at the very least, keep them at arm's distance and just watch and see. Just be a little more wary than you would otherwise. Be a little bit more circumspect than you would otherwise, because your gut's trying to talk to you. So trust your gut and their behavior before you trust their words. This is what we talked about. Fruits. You will know them by their fruits. Look at their behavior, not their words. Number 2, view any signs of smugness, false pride. Yes, yes, yes. Some of these false shepherds that I've been talking about, the neo-Nazi, woke right, whatever you want to call them, full of pride, just oozing out of them. Smugness. Ugh. It should be a huge red flag. Overconfidence, arrogance, entitlement, or superiority regarding manipulation of yourself or others as potentially a symptom of cluster B. Understand that manipulation, no matter how flattering, is not love. So if they are flattering you so that you don't say anything or so that you are loyal to them, even if they're proven to be a monster, like, you're being used. That's not love. That's not a good reason to be loyal because they kissed your ass. That's not a good reason to be loyal. Loyalty is not a virtue if it's loyalty to a monster. It's only a virtue if it's to someone who's deserving of it. Love is the ability to invest in the psychological well-being of another and have that motivation be reflected in long-term caring behavior such as kindness, honesty, respect, and commitment. Number 4, control your reactions. Where at all possible, do not become visibly upset. This is so good. This advice is so good. Do not reveal any of your vulnerable feelings. Don't reveal them. Ah, so true. Avoid argument. This goes to that verse about, like, let God fight for you. Just ignore. Avoid arguments with manipulators as they will be used against you. Like, don't even tangle. Number 5, turn the tables on manipulators by asking probing questions to see if they have an insight regarding their exploitative behavior. For example, does what you're asking me for sound fair? Or what's in it for me? Or are you really asking me to blank, 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 whatever, like have sex on our first date? Do I get a vote, etc.? If the manipulator does have a conscience, they will likely back down. If they double down, they're likely in the cluster B ilk. So this is like when you're first meeting someone and you're getting hints that they might be manipulating you or something. This is a good, I guess, advice for that kind of a situation. In this case, you can still buy time. You can buy time by saying, I'll think about it. If you don't feel safe, leave the situation. If you feel safe, this is number 6, set a firmer boundary by saying no. Tell the manipulator you see what they're doing, and unless it stops, the interaction and possibly the relationship will end. Call them out on their heavy-handed attempts to control you. Do this early and set a boundary with consequences. 2 strikes and they're out. Narcissists generally will not accept healthy limit setting as it violates their grandiosity. Borderlines are more amenable to limit setting than narcissists, and they're capable of comprehending the negative consequences of boundary violations. Let me give you a good example for boundaries. One of the best books on borderlines that I've read had some great advice about family members. If you are in a family that has someone who is a cluster B manipulator, some of the best practical advice I heard was like, don't put yourself at their mercy when you're there physically. Like, for example, if you live with them, you need to be making plans to change that. Like, you can't, it's a combustible situation. So you've got to get out of it. You have to change that situation. You can't just sit there and wait for it to change. You have to start making plans, saving money, whatever it is you need to do to get out of that situation. If you don't live with them, but you visit once in a while, never stay at their house. Like, if you want to, maybe you, depending on what you decide, you going to their house is fine, but staying under the roof, no. Don't put yourself in that situation. Don't be reliant on them for transportation. If you're visiting, have your own set of wheels so you can leave if something crazy happens while you're visiting. These were some very practical things about just limiting the exposure and the time and the degree to which they have any sort of sense of any control over you, over what you see, over what you're involved with, over what you have to leave, right? Good Grief says, I had to move, change my number, and deactivate my social media to get away. I believe it. I am so sorry. And I know there's some of you tuning in and maybe later will be watching this who've all of this is hitting home for you because you've been in it. And you know what? Those of us who've had any type of interaction with a cluster B person, when this Patriarchy Hannah story broke, I was like, we don't have to ask. We're not the people who ask, like, why would someone do this? We know why. I saw some normies being like, why would someone do this? Bless you. And that's nothing bad about you at all. I'm glad that you've never interacted with someone like this and you were like, I don't get it. Bless you. And hopefully this is helpful for you so you can avoid monsters like this if you don't get it and you've never been around someone like this. They are not like you at all. They take advantage of all of your normal people things. They take advantage of your kindness, your the desire to think the best of people, to think that people can change, to think you must have misinterpreted, because there's no way that somebody would just lie. No way that somebody would just make up a person entirely, or make up a conversation entirely, or make up an allegation of whatever kind of allegation entirely. There's no way a normal person would do that. That's because they're not normal. They're not normal. These are just, they're just completely radically different from what you think of as like human behavior. They are not. Like, this is why they collect pieces of people and we call them skinwalkers, because they are trying to pass themselves off and wear a mask of like what a human is. It makes me think of when I was younger, when I was in college, I had a friend whose mom was a bit of a hippie, and she claimed to be a psychic. I don't know if you believe in those kind of gifts or not. I don't know what I think about it, but anyway, she was a bit of a hippie, and she also believed in aliens back then, which now I guess more people do, but back then it was kind of odd. But I remember her telling a story about how she knew aliens were real because she saw a person at the grocery store who this man who was dressed in like old-fashioned, old-timey clothes and an old hat, and he was carrying two grocery bags, one on each, and he wasn't carrying them like a normal person by the handles or anything. He wasn't carrying them in each palm, or he didn't have his arms wrapped around him like this. He had them in the elbow of each arm. He was carrying these two grocery bags, and she was like, that's when I knew aliens were real, because he didn't know how humans carry grocery bags. I say this because that's how I think of cluster B sometimes. I think about that old anecdote about the alien. They're like the alien who doesn't know how human beings carry grocery bags. They're looking around, they're trying to impersonate other people. They don't know what emotions are like for people. They don't know what empathy is like or anything. They don't know what a normal person does. So yeah, that's what they're like. So if you're normal and you've never encountered them and you don't know, because you're normal, you can't imagine someone behaving this way. Like, God bless you, and I hope that this helps you to avoid them, to not get sucked in with one. Uh let's see. So setting boundaries. Number 7, stop talking to people who are not listening to you. Oh, this is so good. This is such good advice. Observe their behavior. This will tell you what they're up to and who they are. Again, it goes back to the behavior, not what they say. Number 8, walk away. Literally back up and away. Yes. That's like the practical advice for if you're ever in the home of someone, let's say there's someone in your family, leave. Also, the advice I was given, or the advice I read that I thought was really good, was like, if they start a crazy emotional outburst attack of some kind of craziness is now happening, you don't tell them, I'm leaving because you're doing this, you don't even engage at all. You just get up and leave. They will learn, again, through behavior. You don't even need the words. If every time they start to do that crazy crap, you leave, they will learn that doing the crazy crap means you get up and leave. So you have to train them, almost, if you're going to keep one in your life by necessity because you feel like you have to for whatever reason, because they're a family member, and you, for what it may be, you have a child who you think is cluster B, or a sibling or someone, and you don't want to do complete cutoff. You can do that kind of a low contact thing. But if you can cut off, do it. I do agree with those who say, like, if you can get out of it entirely, get out of it. That's up for you to decide. I know people who say, why don't you have empathy for the cluster Bs? There were people who are like, I feel bad for Hannah. Okay, on some level, I hear what you're saying. On some level, I do too. But it's like way low in priority compared to how I feel for the people she took advantage of and abused, for her targets and for her victims. It doesn't even come close. So, you know, this is a group of people who will take advantage of you seeing them as someone to pity, or they want your empathy. They want to manipulate and use your empathy, just like woke people do. They use your empathy against you. Yes, Cynthia. Empathy for a monster is wasted on the monster. Pray for them, but beyond that, nope. I agree. Do you feel empathy for O.J. Simpson, who brutally murdered his ex-wife, and some random kind stranger who was bringing her mom's glasses over, doing a favor, and interrupted this and tried to do something? Do you feel empathy for him after he brutally murdered them? I feel empathy for them. I feel empathy for Nicole Brown's family and for Ron Goldman's family. I feel empathy for the people who, and everything that trickled out and spread from that, because it hurts so many different people in different ways. This Patriarchy Hannah anonymous person, all these women talking about the ways in which she hurt them, that it's radiated out. That's just the tip of the iceberg. It's radiated out in ways you can't even contemplate right now. So, like Hillary Crowder said, maybe some of these women stayed in abusive relationships because she shamed them and told them to, or who knows all the different ways it's impacted people. I feel empathy for those people. Yes, Poetry Painter. We've just read about how they need to feel like the victim, so when they get exposed, of course they play the victim. Yes, they do. They always play the victim. John says, I feel empathy for the soul, but the toxicity must be avoided. I know what you mean. And I agree with those. You should pray for them. If it's someone I didn't know Patriarchy Hannah, but if it's someone who's maybe you're one of the people she took advantage of, it's probably going to be very hard for you to pray for her, but you should. It's good. It's good for you. It's good for her. It's good. God, it's a good thing to do. Thank you, Pirate Tomsky. Pirate dropped the link to this article, this Glennis Sherwood article. It's so good. I know I skimmed over some of the last parts because I just wanted to get through the suggestions. So you should go and read the whole thing. Oh, thanks. He says I have super chats. I'm so sorry. I was distracted. KB was here. Hey, KB. I don't know if you're still here, but thank you. He gifted a little membership fairy today. Actually, he gifted 2 memberships. Thank you for supporting the channel. And if you got one of those from KB, that's who it came from. So you can tell them thanks. Poetry Painter for $10 says, I'm glad she was exposed so her cult could have that realization. It's an important lesson to learn. Be careful with your associations. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for the super chat. And you and I both know, have learned this lesson the hard way. Be careful with your associations. I am one of those people who, all the advice I'm giving, I've learned the hard way. I've had to learn not to be overly friendly and intimate with brand new people. I had a person once, let me tell you, I get a lot, my inboxes are all clogged. I apologize. I'm probably never going to get to them. Just I will randomly check whichever one's on top. That's how I do it. And I don't even get I don't even have a huge account. Imagine those accounts, that those really big accounts. I mean, how do they do it? They probably don't do it either. So most of my inboxes are clogged. And all this to say, also I get anxiety when I go in there because there's so many I haven't read or responded to, and a lot of them they're very involved. It's people telling me stories or want me to watch stuff or read stuff, and so it would take a lot of time to get through all of them. Anyway, I don't go in there a lot. This woman had sent me a message and I had not seen it because I don't check them on Facebook Messenger. And the message was totally love bombing, and it was all kissing my ass. It was all flattery. And it was just, just over the top flattery. And at first, I couldn't tell that it was any different from anyone else who was authentically saying, thank you, I love your show, and you help me with a lot of things when it comes to woke or whatever. People do say that, and I'm so grateful when people say stuff, thank you, and when I'm grateful for the kind words. I had not seen this message, and a week went by, maybe not even that long. I can't remember how long went by. And then she sent a second message, and I saw it, and then after that I saw the whole chain. I saw it because that happened to be a day when I looked at whatever message was on top of the pile. and what was on top of the pile was her second one. And from there I scrolled down and saw the first one that was all positive, right? And the second one was a week later, and it was like, you stuck up narcissistic bitch, you blah blah blah, how dare you ignore me? And I was like, what? I'm so glad I never wrote back to your first message, because what if I had said what I usually say, like, oh, thanks for the kind words or something nice, right? And then and then she would have continued, and maybe I would have given her my cell phone number, which I do to people sometimes. And then this crazy person who would have had no idea. You know what I mean? Be careful. My point is, I learned from that, and I have to continually learn from that because it goes against my nature. But I learned from it. Don't take everything at face value, especially when somebody's using flattery. Just be like, okay, but be a little circumspect. Don't immediately say, come to my house. Crazy person. Rosa says, well, she took the mask off real quick. Yes. It was like, girl, I don't even know if it was a week, but she took it off real fast. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I never saw the first one. Everybody says Carrie also ignores my message. Yes. And you guys don't go crazy about it. You understand, I'm just a flaky person sometimes. I go, yeah, we are going to talk to Patriarchy. And as usual, when we do, it'll be like, thank you for being patient, which I always have to say because people are patient with me and I appreciate it. Okay. Yeah, PH Joy. I'm trying to make it a rule not to share my number, but I'll get a little inspired at times too. You get me. I do that. So yeah, I've had to rein myself in. Kevin's answered most of my emails. Oh, good. Yeah, it just depends on what day and how often. It just depends, and which mode of communication. But in general, I don't know how people stay on top. I don't know how people stay on top of it. I've given up because otherwise I'll just be anxious all the time if I think I have to. Anyway, be careful. Be careful with people. Okay, we were going through these. ADL 1982 for $4.99. Thank you, sir. Good to see you. He says, I feel that trad wives, in quotes, generally should be taken with a grain of salt. Don't know if you agree. Yeah, ADL, that's a good point, because when I first started hearing that phrase a lot, I had to ask somebody what it meant. And it meant traditional wives. And then when I saw it being used like online, and the kinds of videos and stuff it was associated with, a lot of it seemed fake and performative to me. So yeah, I think it should be taken with a grain of salt. I mean, some people have pointed out, and I think there's a degree of truth to this, a large degree of truth to this, is that most people who would be called trad wives, well, we don't see them because they are spending all of their time hand making quilts and darning socks and baking pies and breads and growing vegetables and tending to chickens and nursing babies. Like, they're constantly doing all the things that you do as a trad wife. So yeah, I don't know. I think they should probably be taken with a grain of salt. I agree. I have a cousin who I guess would be called, I don't think she's ever called herself that, but I guess she would be called a trad wife. My cousin Kelly Jo, she had a TV show for a while that was called Bringing Up Bates, but the first show was called United Bates of America. She has 19 kids. They're all real kids, not like Patriarchy Hannah. They're all real. She's had 19, all single births too. No adoptions, all hers. And she homeschooled all of them. She actually did a lot of these things that Patriarchy Hannah was claiming she did. And she wasn't on social media very much. I know she was on, she would do like a blog where she would do family updates and stuff. And then when they got the TV show, they had social media, but I think she was being helped with a lot of that. Because, before the TV show anyway, there was a lot of work that she had to do. So I imagine most real trad wives are not, at least they're not like Patriarchy Hannah, where people were saying she was online like 20 hours out of the day. I'm looking to see your clock. Who's Force of Light is here, making butter by hand. Yeah, I mean, they're doing the things that real trad wives. They're homeschooling, by the way. If you have 14 kids, people kept asking about Patriarchy Hannah. Apparently, how is she homeschooling 14 kids? But she's always online. Pirate Tomsky for £5. Thank you for the super chat, Pirate. He says, Carrie, I like your hat, but I prefer the Yorkshire flat cap. Of course you do. A very kind pirate gifted it to me. I almost wore it today, actually. Almost wore it. Didn't quite work with this outfit. Okay, ADL 1992 for $4.99. Thank you, sir. Says, I'm that small percent. That's a size 12. Maybe I did it, even though I was only 2 at the time. Yeah, you didn't. Only it was something 200 and something pairs of that shoe were ever made in a size 12. So that's who it had to be, was one of the people who bought that shoe in a 12. Force of Light Entertainment, Michelle is here. She's been a member for 10 months. She says OJ had seducing spirits. Yes, he did. I guess that's a good way of putting it. I never heard it phrased that way before, but he was really good at, he was charismatic, like they say, like a lot of surprisingly, a lot of psychopaths are, like Ted Bundy. So people were like, I couldn't believe he could do this. He's so charming, seems so real. Well, some of them are very good at the mask, at creating the mask, at observing real people and learning how to imitate it. Some of them are very good at that. Some of them become preachers. Think about all the televangelists, charismatic. I don't mean charismatic as in the type of religion or denomination. I don't actually know very much about charismatic at all. I mean charismatic as in a character trait. Think about the charismatic pastors who are very good with people and use that to their advantage when they're running scams. Deconstruct says, this hat show is great. Look, I used to say, if woke ever dies, if I feel like it's done and it's not something I need to spend time on anymore, if I don't feel compelled anymore to criticize bad ideology, that I'm either, I'll tell you, deconstruct, I would probably open an antique shop. Would be so much fun. I want to do that either way. Or if I ever continued to do a podcast for some reason at that point, it would just either be, it would be about hats and true crime or boots and true crime. That's it. Just fun topics. No ideology stuff. Davina, isn't Dexter about a cluster B person? Well, yeah, I don't know if you've seen that show on Showtime. It's about a serial killer, and he kills other he kills other killers. So he's trying to be a good guy. So I don't know how realistic it is that you could have a sociopathic person who realized there was something wrong with them and wanted to be good, but that's what we're supposed to believe. The suspension of disbelief in this show is that he's cluster B, but he wants to have a conscience. It made me think of, if you're interested in this subject, go into the archives. I interviewed this guy on YouTube. He's got a really large account. His name is HG Tudor. He claims to be a sociopathic or psychopathic narcissist. And he does a lot of videos trying to help explain it to normies so you can better protect yourself against people like him. Now, my immediate question is, although his videos have been very, very helpful for me, but my immediate question is, are you a little bit like Dexter then, like the serial killer who only kills killers? Like you're the psychopathic narcissist, but you want to help other people spot people like you? Why? Like, why? Then when I interviewed, you should go watch the interview. When I interviewed him, I was sort of asking him that. He's charming, even in the video. He's charming. And I was like, I don't want to like you. Why are you making me like you? But I do. He's charismatic while admitting to all this horrible stuff he does. It's weird. Anyway. Okay. Davina says, I don't think Dexter's premise is realistic. Yeah, me either. Pirate Tomsky just plugged HD Tutor's channel since I was mentioning it. Thank you so much. And anything else I missed? I think we're good. You guys, I know this is a little rambly at the end. Little Ragamuffin answered the question, why would he be doing this? Money. Yeah, maybe. And here's the interview when I interviewed him. Thank you, Pirate. Yeah, ADL says, like Hannibal Lecter, helping the FBI, but at a price. Okay, I'm gonna take off. I know this was a little rambly at the end, and this is the way my mind works about this stuff, is I can't help but see patterns of it. And whether you're talking about cluster B stuff online, like this woman who's devastated this whole community of people that she conned, Patriarchy Hannah, or the new O.J. Simpson docuseries that's out. I mean, I'd see there's cluster B stuff about both of these things. They're, to me, the way that my mind works, they're connected. They teach me about people. They teach me about the nature of evil and how to better spot it. And so I hope you got something out of this. And I thank you guys for being here. So I'm going to be back on Wednesday night, 6:00 Central. We're going to be doing a Christian panel, and we'll be doing that here on Deprogrammed. So I hope you'll be here. And if you like the video, please hit like, subscribe, wherever it is you're watching it. And I'll see you guys later. I'll see you on Wednesday. Try to think of something positive or funny to end on, since this was kind of a dark topic, but I can't remember any of the jokes I had about narcissists, so I'm just going to let you go. Okay. See you guys later. Take care. Bye.